Right, picture this. It's a Friday evening in Shoreditch. The pub's absolutely heaving. Everyone's chatting, laughing, having a proper good time. And there's James, standing in the corner, nursing the same pint he bought 45 minutes ago, pretending to check his phone for the 17th time, watching everyone else have conversations that seem to flow effortlessly, whilst he stood there like a spare part at a wedding. Sound familiar? Because here's the thing that nobody tells you about small talk. It's not actually small at all. It's the gateway to literally everything meaningful in your life. Your career, your relationships, your opportunities. And most of us are absolutely rubbish at it. But what if I told you that small talk isn't some mystical gift that certain people are born with? What if it's actually a skill, a proper, learnable skill that anyone can master? Today, we're diving deep into Patrick King's brilliant book, Better Small Talk. And we're going to follow James's journey from awkward wallflower to the most engaging person in any room. This isn't theory, this is transformation. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, we break down the world's best books on communication, productivity, and personal development. But we don't just summarize them. We bring them to life through real stories, practical applications, and genuine transformation. If that sounds like your cup of tea, you know what to do. Subscribe button's right there, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss out. Right, let's talk about James. James Richardson, 29 years old, works as a data analyst at a fintech company in Canary Wharf. Proper clever bloke, actually. Got a first from Imperial. Knows his way around a spreadsheet better than most people know their own postcode. But here's the thing about James. Put him in front of a computer, he's absolutely brilliant. Put him in front of another human being, and he completely falls apart. His typical workday? Arrives early to avoid the morning chat. Eats lunch at his desk whilst everyone else goes to Pret together. Leaves exactly at 5:30, timing it perfectly to miss the lift conversations. And meetings? Absolute nightmare. He's got brilliant ideas, genuinely innovative stuff, but when it comes time to speak up, his throat goes dry, his mind goes blank, and somehow the words that come out are nothing like what he'd planned. His colleague, Sophie, once asked him a simple question. "How was your weekend?" You know what James said? "Yeah, it was weekend. I mean, good. The weekend was present. The weekend was present. Honestly, mate, but here's what makes James's story interesting. It's not that he doesn't want to connect with people. He desperately does. Every Friday, he watches his colleagues head off to the pub together, and there's this ache in his chest because he knows he should be there, but he's convinced he'd just make things awkward. He'd been telling himself the same story for years. I'm just not a people person. Some people have the gift of the gab, and I simply don't. And honestly, that story was ruining his life. Because whilst James was hiding from conversations, his less talented but more socially confident colleagues were getting promoted, getting invited to the important meetings, building the relationships that actually matter in any career. He'd been passed over for promotion twice now. Not because his work wasn't good. His manager even admitted his technical skills were outstanding. But because, and this is a direct quote, "We need someone who can build relationships with stakeholders." Build relationships with stakeholders. James didn't even know how to build relationships with the barista at the coffee shop downstairs. The moment everything changed happened at his company's annual conference. Big do, this one. Clients, investors, senior leadership from the European offices, the works. James had planned his usual strategy. Arrive, make brief appearance, find quiet corner, leave early claiming headache. Foolproof plan, executed flawlessly dozens of times before. Except this time, something went wrong. He got cornered by the CEO of a potential client, a massive potential client. Her name was Victoria Chen, ran a venture capital firm, looking to invest in fintech solutions. And she'd somehow ended up standing next to James at the drinks table. "Hello, I don't think we've met, Victoria." And James, poor, panicking James, said the first thing that came into his head. "I work with numbers." Not, "Hi, I'm James." Not, "Lovely to meet you." Not even his job title. "I work with numbers." Victoria, to her credit, tried to salvage the conversation. "Oh, fascinating. What sort of numbers?" James's response? "All of them, really. The full numeric range." The full numeric range. The conversation limped along for another excruciating minute before Victoria spotted someone she absolutely had to catch and made her escape. James went home that night and did something he'd never done before. He admitted he had a problem. Not a personality flaw, not a fundamental defect in his character. A problem, a skill gap, something that could potentially be fixed. He started researching. Books on communication, YouTube videos, TED Talks. And that's when he stumbled across Patrick King's Better Small Talk. And what he read in those first few chapters absolutely blew his mind. Here's the first thing Patrick King taught James that changed everything. Small talk isn't about you. Revolutionary concept, right? But think about it. What was James doing in every conversation? Thinking about himself. How do I sound? What should I say next? Do they think I'm boring? Am I being awkward? Me. King calls this the spotlight effect. We're so convinced that everyone's analyzing our every word, our every gesture, our every awkward pause, that we become completely paralyzed. But here's the reality. Everyone else is too busy worrying about themselves to properly scrutinize you. Victoria Chen wasn't going home that night thinking, "That strange man said numeric range. How peculiar." She was probably thinking about her own presentation, or her kids, or what she was going to have for dinner. The first lesson: stop making conversations about your performance. Start making them about genuine curiosity in the other person. James decided to test this immediately. The next morning, at the coffee shop downstairs, instead of his usual flat white please and zero eye contact, he tried something different. He noticed the barista, a young lad named Marcus, had a small tattoo on his wrist. Looked like some sort of symbol. Old James would have noticed it, wondered about it, and said absolutely nothing. New James took a breath and said, "That's an interesting tattoo. Is there a story behind it?" Marcus's whole demeanor changed. Turns out it was a Ghanaian symbol meaning return and get it, representing the importance of learning from the past. His grandmother had the same design on a piece of cloth she'd brought over from Accra 40 years ago. They talked for 3 minutes, actual conversation. James learned something fascinating. Marcus got to share something meaningful. And you know what James felt afterwards? Not awkward, not embarrassed, not relieved it was over. He felt energized, connected, human. Encouraged by his coffee shop success, James dove deeper into the book. And this is where things started getting properly interesting. Patrick King introduces what he calls the HPM principle: history, philosophy, metaphor. Sounds a bit academic, doesn't it? But it's actually dead simple and incredibly powerful. Most people, when asked a question, give the shortest possible answer. "What do you do?" "I'm an accountant." End of conversation. Nowhere to go. Both people now desperately searching for the next thing to say. But what if you added history, how you got there? "I'm an accountant, actually fell into it after my gap year plans fell through." Or philosophy, what you think about it. "I'm an accountant. People think it's boring, but I genuinely find it fascinating how numbers tell the story of a business." Or metaphor, a comparison that creates imagery. "I'm an accountant, basically a financial detective. piecing together clues to figure out what's really going on. James started practicing this at home, standing in front of his bathroom mirror like a complete muppet, answering imaginary questions with HPM responses. How was your weekend? Old James. Good, yeah. New James. Actually, quite adventurous. I finally attempted that sourdough starter I've been putting off for months. Philosophy. There's something almost meditative about bread making, you know? You can't rush it. The dough sets the schedule, not you. The next opportunity came in the most mundane setting possible, the office kitchen. His colleague, Tom from marketing, was making tea. The classic awkward kitchen encounter, where both people pretend to be very focused on their beverages to avoid conversation. But James decided to try something different. All right, Tom, how's the new campaign going? Tom looked surprised. James never initiated conversations. Oh, not bad, mate. Bit stressful, actually. Client keeps changing their mind about the messaging. Old James would have said, nightmare, and scurried back to his desk. New James said, that sounds properly frustrating. I was reading something the other day about how creativity actually needs constraints to thrive. Maybe their indecision is accidentally giving you too much freedom. Tom stopped stirring his tea. That's actually a really interesting way to look at it. They talked for 10 minutes about creativity, about client management, about the psychology of decision-making. Tom suggested they grab lunch sometime. This had literally never happened to James before. Not once in 3 years at the company. Now, here's where Patrick King introduces one of the most powerful concepts in the entire book, the question pyramid.
Most people ask what King calls dead-end questions. Questions that can be answered in 1 or 2 words. Did you have a good weekend? Yeah. Do you like your job? It's all right. Nice weather, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Dead end. Conversation goes nowhere. Both people feel awkward. But King suggests thinking of questions in 3 tiers. Tier 1. Surface questions. What do you do? Where are you from? These are necessary but insufficient. They're just the entry point. Tier 2. Exploration questions. How did you get into that? What's the most interesting part? These dig deeper, show genuine curiosity.
Tier 3. Revelation questions. What would you do if you weren't doing this? What surprised you about that experience? These unlock the really interesting stuff. James decided to test this at a work drinks. His colleague Emily mentioned she'd recently been to Copenhagen for a long weekend. Old James. Nice. Cold, wasn't it? New James started at Tier 1, then immediately moved up. Copenhagen! What made you choose there? And I'm curious, was there anything about Danish culture that surprised you or challenged how you see things? Emily lit up, started talking about the concept of hygge, about how different the work-life balance culture felt, about a conversation she'd had with a local artist in a coffee shop. She talked for 15 minutes. James mostly listened, asked follow-up questions, and genuinely found himself fascinated. When they parted ways, Emily said, "That was such a lovely chat. We should do this more often." And James realized something profound. He'd hardly said anything about himself. The entire conversation had been about Emily, and yet she walked away feeling like they'd properly connected. That's when Patrick King's principle clicked into place. People don't remember what you said. They remember how you made them feel. Now, I want to be honest with you here. James's transformation wasn't linear. It wasn't like he read a book and suddenly became James Bond at cocktail parties. There were setbacks, like the time he tried the HPM principle and accidentally went on a 7-minute monologue about the history of sourdough bread to someone who was clearly trying to escape. Or the networking event where he asked such a deep Tier 3 question to someone he'd just met that she genuinely looked alarmed. "We've known each other 45 seconds, and you're asking about my greatest fear?" "Mate, I just came to get a glass of Prosecco." But here's what King emphasizes throughout the book. Failure is data, not disaster. Each awkward interaction taught James something. The sourdough monologue taught him about reading signals. When someone's eyes start glazing over, it's time to ask them something. The networking disaster taught him about calibration. Save the deep questions for when rapport's been established. James started keeping what King calls a conversation journal. After every significant interaction, he'd jot down what went well, what felt awkward, what would I do differently? Not in a neurotic, obsessive way, just as a learning tool. And slowly, patterns emerged. He noticed he was best at one-on-one conversations, less comfortable in large groups. So he started positioning himself at events where he could have deeper chats with individuals, rather than trying to work the entire room. He noticed that his technical knowledge, the thing he'd always seen as socially irrelevant, was actually fascinating to people when presented as stories rather than data. People loved hearing about patterns in financial markets when he framed it as detective work, not when he recited statistics. He noticed that his nervous energy, which he'd always tried to suppress, actually worked in his favor when channeled as enthusiasm. People responded to genuine passion. This is the thing nobody tells you about small talk. It's not about becoming a different person. It's about becoming more effectively yourself. Quick pause here, because I want to mention something. If you're finding this valuable, the best thing you can do is share it with someone who might benefit. We all know someone like James, someone brilliant who's being held back by their communication skills. And if you want to go deeper on this stuff, I've linked the book in the description below. I've also put together a free PDF with the key frameworks from today's video. You can grab that in the description as well. Right, let's get back to James's story, because this is where it gets really good. 3 months into his experiment, something remarkable happened. Remember Victoria Chen? The VC investor James had spectacularly embarrassed himself with at the company conference. She came back. Her firm was seriously considering investing in James's company. Part of their due diligence involved meeting with key team members. And somehow, inexplicably, James's name was on the list. His manager, Claire, pulled him aside. "I know presentations aren't your thing, but I've noticed you've been different lately, more engaged in meetings. People are mentioning it. I think you should take this one." James felt the old panic rising. This was Victoria Chen, the woman he told about his relationship with the full numeric range. This was a massive opportunity for the company, and his manager was trusting him with it. But instead of spiraling, he did something different. He prepared. Not just the technical content, he'd always been good at that. He prepared for the conversation. He researched Victoria, her background, her interests, her previous investments. He thought about what she might care about, what questions she might ask, what her underlying concerns might be. He prepared HPM responses for the obvious questions. He thought about Tier 2 and Tier 3 questions he might ask her. And most importantly, he reminded himself of King's fundamental principle. This isn't a performance, it's a conversation. My job is to be genuinely useful and genuinely curious. The day arrived. Victoria walked in with 2 colleagues. James felt his heart rate spike. And then something shifted. He remembered that Victoria wasn't there to evaluate his social skills. She was there because she was genuinely interested in the company. She had questions. She wanted answers. He could provide those answers. He started with a story, how he'd first noticed the pattern in the data that led to their core product. History, philosophy, metaphor. Not dry statistics, but narrative. When Victoria asked questions, he didn't panic. He listened properly, asked clarifying questions, and gave thoughtful responses. When there was a moment of silence, he didn't fill it with nervous chatter. He let it breathe. And then, towards the end, Victoria mentioned something about her own background, a challenge she'd faced at a previous firm. Old James would have nodded and moved on. New James said, "That sounds genuinely difficult. What did you learn from that experience that shapes how you evaluate opportunities now?" Victoria paused, smiled, and then gave a thoughtful, personal answer. After the meeting, as they were wrapping up, Victoria shook James's hand. "I have to say, this was one of the best conversations I've had during this process. You have a real gift for making people feel heard." A gift for making people feel heard. James had been told he had a gift for conversation. Let me tell you where James is now. The investment went through. Victoria specifically mentioned that her conversation with James had been a deciding factor. James got promoted, not because he suddenly became the loudest person in the room, but because people started noticing that when James spoke in meetings, it was worth listening to. When clients talked to James, they came away feeling understood. He goes to Friday drinks now, regularly. And here's the thing, he doesn't work the room. He doesn't tell jokes. He doesn't dominate conversations. He just connects with one person at a time, genuinely curious about their lives, genuinely interested in their stories. Sophie, the colleague whose "How was your weekend?" question he'd so spectacularly fumbled, is now one of his closest friends. They grab coffee every Tuesday, and their conversations range from work gossip to deep discussions about life purpose. "I always knew there was more to you," Sophie told him recently. "You just seemed so closed off before. What changed?" And James said something that I think captures everything. "I stopped trying to be interesting. I started trying to be interested." So what can we take from James's journey? What does Patrick King's book really teach us? Lesson 1. Small talk is a skill, not a personality trait. James spent years believing he was just not a people person. It was a comfortable excuse that protected him from having to try. But the moment he treated conversation as a learnable skill, like coding or spreadsheet analysis or any other competency, everything changed. Lesson 2. Shift the spotlight. The spotlight effect keeps us trapped in self-consciousness. But when you redirect your attention to the other person, genuinely curious about their experience, their stories, their perspective, conversations become infinitely easier. Lesson 3. Give people something to work with. HPM, history, philosophy, metaphor. Don't answer questions with dead ends. Give people hooks to grab onto, threads to follow, stories to engage with. Lesson 4. Ask better questions. Move up the question pyramid. Don't settle for surface-level exchanges when Tier 2 and Tier 3 questions can unlock genuine connection. Lesson 5. Failure is feedback. James had plenty of awkward moments on his journey. Every single one taught him something. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. Lesson 6. Be interested, not interesting. This might be the most profound principle of all. People don't remember your clever remarks. They remember how you made them feel. And nothing makes people feel better than being genuinely heard. Let me take you back to that pub in Shoreditch. Friday evening, absolutely heaving. Conversations flowing everywhere. And somewhere in this scene, there's another James. Another person standing in the corner, pretending to check their phone, convinced they don't have the gift for this. Maybe that person is you. And if it is, I want you to know something. The conversation skills you admire in others are not genetic advantages. They're not personality superpowers. They're learnable, practicable, developable skills. Every single person you see confidently chatting in that pub was once awkward, was once unsure, was once convinced they'd never figure this out. The only difference is they decided to learn. Patrick King's book isn't magic. It won't transform you overnight. But it's a roadmap, a proper, practical guide to becoming the kind of person who can walk into any room and create genuine connection. James started with a single conversation in a coffee shop. One small experiment, one tiny step. Where could you start? The thing about small talk is that it's not actually small at all. It's the foundation of everything meaningful in your life. Every friendship, every relationship, every opportunity started with someone saying hello and someone else responding. The question is, what are you going to do with your next conversation? If you found this valuable, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and leave a comment telling me about your own small talk struggles or victories. I read every single comment, and I genuinely love to hear your stories. I've linked Patrick King's book in the description if you want to go deeper. Properly good read, highly recommend. Next week, we're diving into the psychology of first impressions, why people form opinions about us in milliseconds, and what we can actually do about it. Until then, take care of yourselves, and maybe, just maybe, start a conversation with someone today that you'd normally avoid. You might be surprised what happens. Cheers.